Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and Dota Underlords just released a new update, and this one is a little bit smaller than most updates. There are only a couple of balance changes, but they could be fairly impactful to some of the top builds. That along with some other updates, and we'll discuss all of those. So here in the general section, we have the usual stuff about fixing some crashing, fixing some animation issues, and specifically about the unit facing. This was a pretty funny bug where after you would lose a round, or actually anytime any of your units are killed during a round, instead of respawning facing the enemy like normal, they would respawn facing backwards or facing towards you. So glad to see that's fixed. That was always a little bit disconcerting when all your guys are just suddenly turned around at you. Other than that, global item achievement requires 2 instead of 4 global items. I know this was a big point of consternation among a lot of players, that it was very hard to complete this with trying to get 4 global items. First off, because finding 4 global items was pretty difficult, and second off, if you picked up 4 of those, that probably means you are very weak, you have no equipable items, and it's going to be hard to win 10 rounds. I was actually able to do this in one game where I picked up 4 global items. I think it was like Embarrassment of Riches, Summoning Stone, I forget the other ones, but they weren't the greatest, and the build wasn't all that great. But I only managed to win 5 rounds with it, and you need 10 to complete the achievement, and I haven't been able to find 4 global items in a game since. So I'm really glad they changed this and made that much more achievable, especially for like an intro level achievement, a tier 1 achievement. Some stuff about bot games, not too impactful. And then last thing here in general is the combat stats kill panel now treats kills like damage, in the sense that summons kills accrue to the summoner. I don't think this really impacts any gameplay issues right now. The only units that care about the number of kills they have are the brawny units, and the brawny units have no way of making summons right now. Although, keep an eye out if they add in new mechanics or things like a way to make a unit into a brawny. That could be really good with things like Venomancer now, assuming these the kills from the summons now accrue on. Right now, I don't think this is any like substantial change, but just keep an eye on it in the future. Next up in the UI section, most of this is just like bug fixes about wrong icons popping up, the free reroll line popping up. Nothing too impactful here. There is one change that I know people really liked, is that whenever you click on heroes in the scoreboard, all heroes of that type will be highlighted. So it's a little bit easier to scout out. You don't need to like look around and count up how many. It'll be highlighted pretty nicely for you. All right, let's see. Gameplay issues. So these are once again just kind of bugs. Fixed an issue with ability targeting, which certain units' health were not properly excluding summons. Oh, that's actually interesting. That now abilities will properly ignore summons. Hopefully that can avoid issues where like Lena was ulting Plague Wards and or wait, health was not properly excluding summons. Oh, maybe that's to do with the Warlock buff. I'm not entirely sure what this bug is referencing, but glad it's fixed. And Techie's Bomb, I actually hadn't experienced this. I haven't played too much Techies, but now it won't damage you if it still survives because it's not technically a unit. Wonderful. All right, so on to the actual balance changes they've made here. So Elusive buff was really a kind of a breakout alliance or build in this most recent patch when they changed it to all units gain 75% evasion. This is a very slight nerf, and now it says all heroes gain 75% evasion. It used to affect like summons, but really the only summons that build would have is like the Treant Protector or Nature's Prophet Treants, and those were not very impactful to have evasion. I guess it's a slight nerf, but whatever. That's not really that impactful. The Demon Hunter change, this is actually a pretty big change. The typical elusive build was 9 elusive plus Terrorblade, because then you'd get the 2 Demon Hunter and you'd get all 9 elusive, and then Terrorblade himself would be very elusive, or 75% evasion. And the change to Demon Hunter now says, instead of the old text, basically the old version would say, if you have exactly Anti-Mage and Terrorblade and no other demons, then Terrorblade would get the plus 50% for him just being a demon, unless your opponent has a Demon Hunter. and then he'd get plus 50% because the Demon Hunter bonus says all demon units gain 50% pure damage. Then he would get it again because it says all demon hunters gain 50% pure damage. So that's 3 instances of plus 50% pure damage. That's what made Terrorblade really absurd. And when you had exactly Anti-Mage and Terrorblade, because of the weird way this is worded, he would kind of triple dip on this plus 50% bonus. Now it only says invalidates your opponent's demon alliance bonus, and then all demons and demon hunters gain 50% pure damage. So this is a really substantial nerf to Terrorblade. In the case that he was most commonly played in this last patch, he's only going to get 2 instances of plus 50% pure damage. I don't know if this really drops him completely out of the top of the meta. He was pretty much, S tier, pretty much always picked, always tried to be played because of this bonus. It's hard to say. I mean, this is a pretty substantial nerf to him, and I think this will drop him to kind of still a good unit, but not the top of the top tier. The next balance change here we've got is that hunters have been slightly buffed. At 3 hunters, you get from 20% chance up to a 25% chance. And then at all 6 hunters, you go from 35 to 40. This was definitely needed. Hunters were very lackluster in this patch. And for a while, actually, since they changed Medusa up to 5 cost. I don't know if this really is enough. I think hunters are still, they feel very far behind in damage compared to things like knights, who have just so much damage reduction. It feels like my opponent has a 6 knights comp, I have a 6 hunter comp. I'm just like, I don't even deal any damage to them. It feels still very weak. And this slight increase in the chance of double attacks, I don't think this is enough. I think they are still very, very poor in the current meta. Next up, some hero changes. So Doom, his ability now uniformly disables passive bonuses. I think Doom is actually a underrated unit in the meta, which is kind of odd to say. This is a slight buff. I guess there were some units where he didn't properly disable, including the Alliance passive bonuses. I hadn't tested Doom super extensively to really know exactly everything that he turned off, but it's kind of weird to me because early in Dota Underlords, Doom was like top tier. He has very high DPS, very high tankiness, awesome CC ability. Like, what's not to love? He does everything. But for some reason, like, he hasn't got nerfed, and he's just been like falling down in popularity. I guess he doesn't have an AoE effect, and maybe people are thinking it's much more of an AoE-centric meta. In that case, this slight buff may bring him back. I don't think he needed it, but I guess this is more of a uniformity and clarity issue, so I'll take it. Definitely pick up Doom. He's really strong. Lycan transforms and he gains 30% max health. He heals by the full 30% each time, rather than this being based on his current health at the time of transforming. This is a pretty substantial buff to Lycan, and maybe this along with the Hunter buff maybe gets him somewhere. I don't know. This doesn't really help his damage output. It helps his survivability a little bit. But what's interesting about this is previously, let's say he had 100 health, and then you drop him, and then he transforms at, say, 50% health. His max health would go up by 30% to 130, but then he would still stay at 50%. So he would only gain 15 life instead of the full 30. So now he's going to gain the full 30. And this will be really impactful when he's really low on life. Like, he's about to die, and then he transforms, and then suddenly he comes back up to 30% health. Another thing that's really interesting with this change is the interaction of Bracers of Desperation, the new item that refreshes your cooldown whenever you drop below 30% life. I've heard reports that this can trigger multiple times on the same unit, and I'm not positive. I haven't seen it myself, but if the reports are true, this is very interesting on Lycan because you give him Bracers of Desperation. He drops below 30% health and gets his cooldown refreshed. Then he transforms, and that heal puts him above 30% health. Then he drops back down again, and he transforms again, and heals again. I think that would be a really absurd interaction if that actually works, but I'm curious, and it sounds very strong, and maybe this is a very good combination now. It probably is not intentional. And so if that is how that works and it becomes a little bit too powerful, look for that to be hotfixed or nerfed very soon. But in the meantime, we can enjoy that while it lasts. Juggernaut. Juggernaut is eligible to cast Blade Fury if he has enough mana not on cooldown and he's about to take magic damage. So this actually relates to a previous Juggernaut change that I was not a fan of. They changed Juggernaut a couple patches back to say he's not going to use his Blade Fury ability if he's only surrounded by one opposing unit. I didn't really like this because of this case where he's tanking one unit, he's attacking, and he's getting hit by magic damage from the backline. Whereas if he just started spinning, maybe he deals a little bit less damage, but he's completely immune to that magic damage. So now they've made it so that you can actually use the magic immunity part of his ability a little bit better. And the last change here, a slight item change to Helm of the Undying. Undying units, if they are in the Undying state, will not deal damage to the opponent, but they will still count when determining which side won a round. This was a very weird and awkward interaction before because your unit would have 4 seconds of Undying, and if you won the round while they were Undying, they would count as damage to the opponent, which was kind of weird because if they also had like an ability like a Witch Doctor Cask bouncing around, then the fight would go on until that ability resolves, and in the meantime, the Undying unit might die. So the exact like lag, or it's not really lag or latency, but like the amount of time the game processes from, okay, combat's over, now I need to count which units are still alive, was sometimes very inconsistent with Helm of the Undying. So that's good that they made this much more consistent. This item is still exceptionally strong, and this, while you could take this as a slight nerf, it's more of a consistency issue or clarity issue, much like the Doom change. So still pick up this item. It's really good. It's especially good on Bloodseeker in the early game because he gets bonus attack speed for how much life he has lost. So if he's at 0% life, he has massive attack speed. For those 4 seconds, he can just go crazy. So this item's still great. Still pick it up and still put it on all the same units you would put it on. So that's about it. That is a pretty small patch in comparison, although it definitely can shake up the meta a little bit with the elusive Demon Hunter build getting rather substantial nerfs and Hunters getting a couple buffs, especially with Lycan and their bonus. So maybe try out Hunters a little bit more, although I'm still not convinced they are anything but a low tier strategy. All right, thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. See ya.